And welcome back to the Constitutionals Podcast. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the premier podcast for the website, cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. I'm going to be open up real honest with you guys right now. I just recorded the application. I'm not complaining about stuff to talk about because I have a deluge of stuff to talk about. But I do want to mention that I did do a Halloween episode of that podcast, which is a podcast, again, that I'm doing just to have on my application for what's the place called, for WABE in Atlanta. That is literally what the podcast is about. It's about me applying for a job there. And it is a Halloween episode where I talk in a spooky voice and there's spooky music and that's it. There's nothing else. So there's that. So I talk in that spooky voice and my throat is killing me. So let's move on to the stuff I actually want to talk about. I did say this. I did this last week. I did a film pitch. I pitched a movie. Essentially, what happened is I did this thing for Roll Call Atlanta. Roll Call is a big kind of like meeting thing. I don't know what they are. So whatever. It was called Film Pitch ATL. Was the event, and every month we meet, and there's like, this month there were a crap ton of people. My God, there were at least 50 people there, whereas the first couple of times it was not that many people. It was decidedly less. But yeah, there are definitely like at least 50 people there. And what I did was I got up there and I presented a script that I had written. You know, one of the movies that I talked about that I've written. I don't think I actually mentioned the movie here. I'm not going to, because I think it's a really good idea, and it has not been done before. So I two of the movies that I wrote have not been done before. So I'm really going to keep those close to the chest just for now. You know, just in case I get an agent at some point. But I did the pitch and it went over well. I did the networking thing. I did I had to present a slideshow, and the slideshow was not good. I have to be pretty honest with you. The slideshow wasn't good, even though I spent a good amount of time working on the pitch aspect. I followed the template for what the guy laid out. You know, the host was really nice, and he laid out the stuff that we should look to cover. And then, you know, if we want to add anything, then we can add something. But I'm trying to pull up the template now. So essentially what it was I pray I cut to this camera. I don't know if I can see it on my lap. Essentially what it was, if you're watching the video version, you can see the blue outline of my slideshow. And I made a video to go along with it, a nice short 3-minute long video that really just encapsulates what the movie is about. And it's just about, I mean, I guess I could talk what it's I don't know. I really don't want to mention what it's about. If you could pause the video right there, I just held up the log line for some reason. But I did this whole thing and it was great. People liked it. People laughed at the thing, because I put jokes in there, of course. They didn't just laugh at me, but there was stuff I put in there that people laughed at. Let me see if I can make this the big view of it. If you're watching the video, you will get a kick out of this. But here's a half naked picture of me I put up. I showed the 60 something people. I also put it on my Instagram, but who cares? It was on my Instagram story. And that's me, part of the crew, but it was great. I like going to that event. Networking is, I hate that word so much. It feels so dirty. But, you know, it was a fun thing to do, and I'm glad I got a chance to do it. And, you know, and I met some people. Hopefully they want to work with me. Some people said they're going to email me. Some people never did. Those are the same people that never did. I wonder if I've ever worn this shirt while I've recorded this podcast on camera. I hope not. I hate having repeats. So there's that. And then let's see. Oh, I hope you checked out the feed last week. Ryan Singer. I had an interview with him. I just didn't want to type up that interview. I'm not going to lie. Because he gave you a lot of long answers. I just didn't want to type it up. So I hope you checked it out. It was a good interview. It's got a lot of good listens to it, so that's really nice. So I think I gained some subscribers from that too. Doubt I did, but it was very interesting. Let's move on. I got to keep moving quickly because we're running out of time for this half of the show. Oh, I was running this week. So I run every week, every Sunday essentially, or Saturday night. That's a supplement with my weightlifting. So I run and weightlift. No big deal. And so I was running. I decided to run on. It was going to be cold, and here in Atlanta, it was going to be cold on Sunday morning, around 40 degrees. So I said, no, I'm just going to hold off on that. I'll wait all day, and I'll run at 5 p.m. So I say I've already told this to the application, so I'm trying not to retread over a lot of too many details. If there's a lot of cross pollination in that show, there's not. There's definitely not. That show has a lot of subscribers, but less subscribers than the Constitutionals. Constitutionals old though. Anyway, check out the application. It's a wonderful show. Anyway. I ran, so I was running. So basically, what amounts to do is I meant to run at 5 p.m. I started running because of stretching and whatnot. I started running and whatnot. I started running at 5:30. I'm running down here in Old Fourth Ward. I'm running, and I get near Ponce. I'm having a surprisingly good run. I get near Ponce, and I don't want to be too specific about this. I'm running in a direction. And I see an old man. I see a man cross the street, and I go, okay. We're on the sidewalk. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of this guy's way. I'm not gonna look at him. I'm not even gonna talk to him. I look down as I'm running again. I get closer to him. I look up, and I go, he looks a lot like Hank Azaria from The Simpsons. I look down again. I go, wait a minute, that was Hank Azaria. And what I do is, this is the greatest moment of my entire life. I get up, I run, I see him, I go, oh my gosh, you're Hank. I pull out, I'm doing the motion right now. So if you're watching the video, you're getting the full story. I'm running, I see him, and I pull off my headphones, my headphones, I go, Hank Azaria. And he goes, and he turns around, looks at me, and he sounds just like Mo Sizlak. I swear to God, from The Simpsons. And he goes, hey, how you doing? And we look at each other. Let me give you some context. All I'm wearing is a pair of shorts, some shoes, and these headphones. No shirt, very shirtless, and he's clearly on the phone. He's on the phone, wearing AirPods, talking. And so he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" Split second, we both go our separate ways, like as if we're done with the conversation. I go, "All right." He goes, all right, have a good one. And I go, yeah, you too. Thanks. I just run off, very happy. And then for the rest of the run, I was so excited. I was running on air, which is very true. And then I knew that one of his co-stars, she just joined the show as a recurring character, Tawny Newsome. She's from Bajillion Dollar Properties. In the podcast, she was as racist, but she just joined the show, and I listened to the podcast, and she was talking about being in Atlanta. And I was wondering, for the past couple of weeks, she's been talking about being in Atlanta on the podcast. I've been wondering, where is she staying? Because she said she's staying in a hipstery area, and then for a split second, I kept thinking, oh, maybe she's down in Old Fourth Ward, maybe she's in Virginia Highlands, maybe she's somewhere near this area, because she has to be. Turns out, I believe they are. But I'm not gonna get too specific where he was walking, what direction he was coming from, but I did see him in my neighborhood, so that's really cool. Well, not in my neighborhood. I saw him how far was I in the run? I was probably like 10 minutes away. So I was about a 10-minute run away. So just any direction, come to my place, which you know where I live. You don't. And then just run in any direction, 10 minutes, and then you'll see Hank Azaria. It was really cool. I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and he was nice enough to go, hey, how you doing? That's all I expect. I really, in my head, I saw him, and I was like so many things went through my head. I was like, I wonder if he is talking about the Apu thing, because apparently some random movie producer was talking about how he knows what the Simpsons are going to do with Apu, and he says that they're going to drop him. And then Al Jean came out and said, no, he doesn't. He's not part of the show. He doesn't speak for us. We're not going to drop Apu. But I would not doubt it if they dropped Apu. I would fully expect it at this point. So there's that. And yeah. Oh, I finally sat down and watched Manifest and The First. Turns out those shows are so good. Manifest is a show on NBC, hour-long procedural. That's like Lost on a plane. These characters, all these people in this show are on this plane, and some turbulence happens, and they think it's just turbulence. Like they experience this heavy turbulence. Also, if you watch the show, there's a guy in the turbulence. When the turbulence happens, there's an extra on the left side of the screen who is in the front row of the plane, who is experiencing the worst acting of his life. And Jimmy Pardo mentioned this on Never Not Funny. But this guy is on this plane, and the plane shakes, and the guy goes, if you're watching the video, you saw exactly what I did. But he clenches his seat, and he jettisons his entire body up. It was so too much overacting. But they experience the turbulence and then they land, and they're 5 years later. They've jumped 5 years in the future. One of the main characters is a child who has a twin sister who has grown up without him. And it is such a sad thing because, I mean, yeah, we don't know what happened, but these people, like a lot of people just moved on with their lives. Like one of the main characters, his wife started seeing somebody else, but she's still very much in love with him. And then the other one, his sister, who is the main character, I believe, who we don't know. She her best, she killed her best friend on accident, and her best friend's parents hate her, and her fiance moved on, but apparently all these people still have jobs and lives and stuff, except for the guy main character whose wife met somebody else. Anyway. It's a great show. It's just like Lost, and of course you can get the comparisons because we don't know what happened, and then people start getting killed, and all this weird stuff happen. Like it's a very supernatural show, and I don't expect much from it. It's just a cheesy procedural that I'm going to enjoy. And the first is about Sean Penn. He's an astronaut. He watches this young crop of astronauts. They're about to make the first manned mission to Mars. Of course, you know what happens. This happens in the first 5 minutes. The shuttle blows up, and now I've only seen the first 2 episodes, or I've seen half of the second episode. So now we know that Sean Penn is probably going to go to space. He was supposed to, or something like that. I don't know. He's very vascular in that show. He's got a lot of veins popping out, and his shirt's off all the time. He's built, but come on. And finally, Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj is a wonderful show. He's coming off with these. You know what? Hold on. I'm going to talk about that in the second half of the show. We have already eclipsed my runtime for this first half. So let's take a break, and then we'll come right back and do the second half of the show. Okay. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into this second half of the show. I just left all the equipment recording, so hopefully this is working. Except for that camera that's in front of me. That's all right. So the reason why I saved Patriot Act for the second half of the show is because the main story I want to talk about is working. There's a story about Netflix that I found on Slash Film the other day. I was walking down the street just the other day, and I found this story on Netflix. I had to finish that bit. I had a football coach who was the head coach for receivers. And I love a good mid-sentence swallow. Oh, my God. On the NPR podcast 1A, you can hear the panelists, everyone who's on that show, you can hear them swallow mid-sentence, and it is just the worst. So, and a football coach who I was not a good receiver, a good player until like my senior year, basically. I'd say junior, senior year, and but anyway, so when I got to varsity and I was working with varsity, the coach I would always like slow down if I didn't know a route, or slow down if I dropped a pass or something like that, and coach would always yell at me. He gave. I don't want to get too detailed with this because this is not the type of show for it. Well, it is the type of show for it, but I don't want to put him on blast. But he always gave people nicknames, and mine was Republic for Republic of Chad. I also want you to keep in mind that as another black receiver, he named him Suburban because he didn't talk like a thug. So just think about those nicknames: Republic of Chad and Suburban. So, and you'll know what type of. He's a really nice guy. He was really nice to everybody, but I'm just saying his thought process. So he goes Republic every time I like drive past, and I would slow down. If you're gonna mess up, and I'm butchering his quote, but if you're gonna mess up, you mess up at 100%. And I'm like, yes, coach. And so I do everything at 100% now. Like even if I mess up, I do it at 100% because if I don't know what I'm doing, and there's no one to help me or help me understand or whatever. That's the only way you're going to learn, because somebody eventually will say, hey, you can't do that. Like I got a ticket for the last time I was with my ex. I got a ticket for my tags being expired. Uh, and so I didn't know they were expired. I completely forgot. I go completely honest. I forgot. And then I handle it, and then it's handled. So there we go. So Patriot Act is a show by Hasan Minhaj, and it's his late night show essentially. Netflix recently canceled The Break with Michelle Wolf, and I wouldn't call Joel McHale's show late night, but it was their only other talk show. Chelsea had a talk show there that was weekly, and that went on for 2 years, a year and a half. I have a computer in front of me. I don't care to look it up because I don't want to. But that went on for a very long time, and that had a lot of episodes. And then she had a documentary series, and then she's still doing stuff with them, but I don't know where that's coming from. Know what that is. Know what it's going to be. So they've had 3 talk shows, and I believe, and then Jeanette McCurdy was on a weekly show. So they've had 3 talk shows, 3 weekly shows, 5 weekly shows at this point. 3 talk shows, 5 weekly shows at this point. Hasan Minhaj's show is the next weekly show. The Break with Michelle Wolf was really, it was good. It had a rough start, and the later episodes were better. And it's just a shame that show was canceled. I guess it couldn't find a footing. And this is what can be stressful working at. Hold on. I don't want to get into this, but this is what until the article I talked about. But this is what can be stressful about working at Netflix, is because they don't give you the numbers, they don't give you the metrics. The only time they release it is when they want to do something cutesy, like 18 million people watched rom-coms this summer on Netflix. And I mean, if that's not scary, if they say like 400 people watched A Christmas Story 17 times in 18 days, like that's scarier than Google knowing my name. I don't care if Google knows my name. Of course they're gonna know my name. But if Netflix can hone in on a dozen people watching the Angry Beavers, I don't know why I chose Angry Beavers. If they can hone in on a dozen people watching Boss Baby at 2 a.m. and they know them by name, that's come on. I don't understand. People, it's just whatever. So Patriot Act is Hasan Minhaj's late night show. They released 2 episodes. They're really well done. Although I couldn't tell which one's the first episode, which one's the second episode. And he mentions that the first episode is the first episode. I started watching the second episode because of the way they uploaded it this past Sunday. It's a very interesting show. I understand why they ordered 36 episodes of it, because it's done well. He's standing up. He's not sitting. And what he does is he starts with the big story up front. He has like an 18-minute monologue, I believe, like on Saudi Arabia's Jamal Khashoggi, on Saudi Arabia itself. And he talks about MBS. Oh, who is the guy? The Saudi prince. He talks about the Saudi prince and all of the bad things that he's done, and the wrongdoings and everything of the nature. And it is so interesting to see. They have these great, beautiful graphics because he has a bunch of TV screens behind him that are laid out in such a well-lit manner. And they have all these wonderful graphics that slide on screen, and they're presented well, and they're not the joke. Whereas on, Last Week Tonight or The Daily Show, they'll crop in some fake crap or whatever, but they have all these statistics in the background. It is so beautiful. It's a very well presented show, and Hasan Minhaj is such a great, charismatic person. That's what I read in one of the interviews. They said it was charismatic, and I was like, yeah, he's not interviews, reviews. So yeah, he's very charismatic. What I also love about the show is that they cut to the audience. They don't cut to the audience. They cut around the audience, so you see their faces. A lot of brown people in there. Because I only mention it because when you and I love Conan to death, but when you watch a Conan, when you watch a Myers, when you watch any of the Jameses and Jimmys, when you watch Steven, it's all white people. And I mean, you can say that these tickets are free and they're given away at random, but they're still all white people. Hasan Minhaj's show deliberately was brown people and people of, I assume he's a Muslim, so I assume people of the Muslim faith. And heritage and stuff like that. So it was really nice and really refreshing to see all those beautiful, just gorgeous brown people sitting in the entire studio space. And it felt really intimate because they weren't on risers, they were in chairs. I think some of them were lifted up. But it's a great show. I definitely urge you to check it out, and I can't wait to see what they do for the next 34 weeks. I don't know if they're gonna do one every week. But they will do one every week. And I don't know if they'll do 10 and then stop for a little bit and then do 10 more. That's what really sucked about when Last Week Tonight first came on. Last Week Tonight and Full Frontal, they both started with 10, like 10 to 15 or something like that, and then that was the end of the season. And then they would come back the following year, like TBS and HBO would order a couple more episodes, here and there. But then they would come back the next year, and then you would hear that they have Last Week Tonight has 30 episodes they're doing, so it's one a week. And then they're missing 22 weeks. And then Full Frontal has 45 they're doing, and they're going to miss the other, or no, they wouldn't have 45. That's too many for them. They would have 30, and then they would miss, a certain amount of weeks. But it's so great to see them now being three years in for Full Frontal, I believe. And then for Last Week Tonight being 5 or 6 years in, and them doing, having, all these great stories. But I still think that there's more that they can do. Especially for airing one episode a week. They can, Sam B's show definitely has a lot of presence on the internet. So I think I think Last Week Tonight should at least attempt the same, So there's this article on Slash Film called Working at Netflix Doesn't Sound Very Fun, according to employees, written by Chris Evangelista. And it's a very interesting article. 2 weeks ago, we heard about, if you're into video games, we heard about Rockstar. They just told their employees, hey, talk about your experience. You're allowed to talk about your experience working at Rockstar. And because before you're not allowed to talk about working there. And apparently there's a lot of, this is what happened with Telltale too. A couple weeks ago when I talked about Telltale, them closing down, there's a lot of, and this happens in the game industry as a whole. There's a lot of crunch time, especially when the game was about to come out. And so people were working 80 to 100-hour weeks, and they said it sucked, and it just wasn't fun. You're not getting really compensated for the extra time you put in, and it's stressful and all this stuff. And so working at Netflix, according to the Wall Street Journal, who has a report from them, a bunch of employees are saying that working for them is a quote from Slash Film, unpleasant at worst and downright strange at best. This is from the Journal. The Netflix way emphasizes freedom and responsibility, trusting employees to use discretion, whether it is about taking a vacation, flying business class, or expensing an Uber ride home. Virtually every employee can access sensitive information, from how many subscribers sign up in each country to viewership of shows to contractual terms for Netflix's production deals. Wow. I didn't read that last part. Executives at the director level and above, some 500 people, can see the salaries of every employee. So if you work at Netflix and you have a computer, you can see the terms of, I don't know, who's on Netflix? What's the show? The Great British Bake Off, which was, side note, Great British Bake Off was bought by Netflix in August. I had no idea. So they're going to be releasing the new episodes. There's a new episode coming, a holiday episode later this year, but they're going to be releasing new seasons, which is great. I don't say a lot of shows are perfect for Netflix. That show, The Great British Bake Off, is perfect for Netflix. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see more episodes of that show. So but that's very strange. If you have your own computer, you can see the deals of these people. On top of that, quote, employees are encouraged to give one another blunt feedback. So that means a manager can say, you're not doing your best. And then later on in the article, this is called a keeper test. They can say you're not doing your best. Managers can sit down and ask themselves, is this person giving me 110%? If they're not, then they can say, okay, you're done. You're fired. And they're just allowed to fire you. All right. So yeah, asking themselves whether they would fight to keep a given employee. Okay, so here's another paragraph. Here's another quote from the article. The firings can be insensitive, several former employees said. Ernie Tam, who had worked at Netflix as an engineer for, I just abridged all of this. Ernie Tam, who had worked as a Netflix engineer for 6 years, was called into his manager's office on a Monday morning in 2015. You're no longer a star performer, the manager said. An HR representative came in, discussed Mr. Tam's severance package, and took his laptop. I just left the office and never came back, Mr. Tam said. For a period of 6 years, I was a star performer. Then all of a sudden, I was not. Mr. Tam said he was surprised, despite receiving negative feedback from his manager all over the previous month earlier. What? from his manager over the previous month because earlier managers had given him time to improve after criticizing. That is crazy. That is that is like someone coming to your house and saying, "Oh, your child is getting a little fat there. You're feeding them too much. We're gonna take him away from you." That's horrible. And everybody, I mean, all businesses like this have these types of practices, and so a lot of them you can't talk about. Who was it? Apple. You can't talk about stuff going on at Apple. You can't talk about stuff going on at Disney. And these people come out of here saying, a lot of people could be having horrible times, but a lot of people could be having great times, of course. Let's see. Not a lot of people interviewed by the Journal don't have a lot of negative things to say about Netflix as a whole. It's just this keeper test is just a very strange thing. It's so weird. Man, and they're building that new building in LA. It's supposed to be done by 2020, that high rise. Because they're right across the street from the Earwolf Studios, apparently, is what I know. Oh my gosh. But Netflix. That's crazy. Can you imagine that saying, "You're not good enough. We're gonna fire you"? Oh my gosh. That's man. Well, that's it for the podcast. With every episode just ending like that. Well, that's it for the podcast. Listen, if you like what you heard here, why don't you head on over to cpluscomedy.com, where we've got interviews, we've got podcasts. We have 2 podcasts, the Application Podcast, which is there every single day. It's so good. I love doing that show. He said with his eyes looking up at the ceiling. It's so good. It's such a good show. Today's episode, like I said earlier, is a Halloween episode that again has nothing to do with me working in there. I don't know why I made that episode. But definitely check it out. It's a great podcast talking about me getting a job at WABE. That's what the there was referring to. The working there was referring to. It's hopefully. Oh, and I have an interview there on Monday. So please keep good thoughts on me. I talked about this already in the application. So check out the episode from yesterday, which is Tuesday. Tuesday's episode. Also, I've been doing this show for 82 weeks, and I have barely cursed, which is wonderful. Also, check out Barely Cursed. That might be the title of this episode. Also, check out News Time. You can check out News Time on youtube.com/cpluscomedy. And that's also where the video version of this podcast lives. So if you wanted to see me reenact the guy from Manifest, then you can see me do it on that YouTube channel. youtube.com/cpluscomedy. This week's episode of News Time is a weekly show. It's like last week's night. It's like the Daily Show. It's like it's the Daily Show, but weekly. It's Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. It's a weekly show, entertainment news. I tackle one story. It's great. I love it so much. This week's episode is about horror making the jump from movies to TV. It's not good. I love it so much. Definitely check it out. So if that's it, I think that might be it for this episode. Okay. Thanks. Bye.